Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is a weekly news wrap up, the WNW 269 for Friday, January 27th, 2017. Whew, the month is almost over. Just a quick word about the inauguration. This is on the front page of my local paper. They actually had a nice cover, although Trump didn't say it was his America. He said the country was back to you. Some of the commentary from the mainstream press was just absolutely outrageous. Just shows how out of touch they are. One commentator called Hitlerian. I think that was Chris Matthews. Hitlerian, like Hitler, and also deranged, and all kinds of also terrible stuff. And this is a Rasmussen poll. If you take a look here, a recent poll from Rasmussen reports that 72% of likely U.S. voters agree with the remark the president made during his inauguration address, stating that for too long, it's a small group in our nation's capital that has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. 72% of voters. The Democrats and Republicans are off on retreats. The Democrats, I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, if you take a look at this inauguration address, I'm sitting there watching it going, Trump just took all the unions. He just took all their voters. He took all the blue-collar deplorables. He took all the people that get dirt under their fingernails, and he took them away from the Democrats, which have turned into the party of illegal immigrant above citizens, which turned into the party of the New World Order, the elitist, the Wall Street Party. Hillary Clinton got 145, 150 million in donations from Wall Street. The cheating party, the collusion party with the mainstream press. I don't know what the Democrats think they are. I mean, who are they working for? Not the common person. And, I just want to go into Trump's first week in office, and I'm going to leave some stuff out. The very first thing he did was on Obamacare, and this is very important. He basically said, we're not going to collect the tax. Basically, in his executive orders, why collect the tax when we're not going to have this? I mean, in his words, it's imploding, and it is imploding. All the government co-ops are going under. The whole thing's designed poorly. It's super expensive, high deductibles. Bill Clinton, it's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. The premiums are sky high. The deductibles have gone way up, and you get less. I mean, basically, that's what he said. Bill Clinton. And also did something else really important. Judge Napolitano brought this out on Fox, and he said, this is revolutionary. He said, the IRS, you have the discretion to rule in favor of the government or the citizen, and whenever you reach that, you rule in favor of the citizen. Unbelievable. Some of the other ones, and people are unbelievable. This one here, Trump moves fast on oil pipelines. The XL is one of them. Trump moves to build the wall. Mexico canceled a meeting with, which I think is a mistake, with Trump, and then now Trump is talking about a 20% tax, a tariff to pay for the wall. And then we have this one, and I want to talk about this. Trump clamps down on illegal immigration and also voter fraud as well. He clamps down on all of it. And then illegal immigration is a horrible thing. I mean, one thing about illegal immigration, it's dangerous. Here's a story just happened this week. 5 illegal aliens arrested after shooting a woman 13 times, say police. That's on Breitbart. But the other thing is it's huge expense. And this is, one of the things that Trump is going after, voter fraud, which I want to talk in depth about, and the expense of illegal immigration, the incarceration, the EBT cards, the free housing, the education, a huge expense on America. And, he is going to redirect how money is spent in America, and he's going to redirect it for the benefit of Americans. And big news this week about voter fraud. And let me just start this out with this right here, which I've been pointing out to you, that Trump is going to crack down on voter fraud because he wouldn't have gotten, this guy. And let's just go ahead. I'll give you his picture here. Yes. Dan McGahn, former chairman of the Federal Election Committee. Now, of all the White House counsels he could have hired, he hired somebody who was on the FEC, a former election, committee commissioner. And to me, that was signaling a big, big deal. So what does Trump blurt out this week? Let me just go ahead and put my glasses on. Here's how it's viewed, because, after all, anybody that talks about voter fraud, that's just wackadoodle, crazy. Oh, crazy, there's no voter fraud. This is what the left says, which is preposterous, and I want to go into it. Here we go. The sorest winner of all time cannot stop whining. And let me just read this to you. The commander-in-chief told bipartisan group of congressional leaders that between 3 and 5 million legal votes caused him to lose the popular vote. And this is, he goes on to say, and I want you to read this here, right in here, is that that's a ludicrously false claim. I mean, within the first week, calling the president a liar. And that is not hyperbole. Trump is the sorest winner in American history. And then we have, this is Washington Post, there have been just 4 documented cases of voter fraud in the 2016 election. Really? What about all that Project Veritas stuff that they got on camera? People who were committing and conspiring to, on camera, committing election fraud and vote rigging and voter fraud, and would laying out how they got paid from the, Clinton to the Democratic National Committee to another group to, and maybe some other groups, and then down to us. That person quit. And then, of course, the other dirty tricks they were running, was it Bob Kramer, who was at that White House 300 times in 40 meetings with the president, and, inciting violence at Trump rallies and then blaming it on the Trump voters is outrageous. Of course, that doesn't count with the Washington Post. And anybody that complains about the unfair treatment from the media now, and I got to tell you, folks, is called crazy. And I want to finish my thought. Here's how they, Trump's insecurity hinders his momentum. His momentum is not hindered at all. But anybody that brings up this voter fraud, just crazy, it just doesn't happen. Just not happening. No way. There's no way that he's going to hire a former federal election commissioner and then get that fact 3 to 5 million. I think he's right. And so Trump comes out and says, we're going to launch a major investigation into voter fraud. It should also include election fraud. Project Veritas had it in 2016. Had him on camera talking about it. Paid operatives from the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign. Supposedly that money flowed through the DNC, through other sources, and to the people that wanted to rig the vote and commit voter fraud and election fraud. That happened, folks. That's documented. And, why would President Trump get the crazy idea that people would want to, actually encourage voter fraud, especially from illegal aliens? Remember a week or so before the 2016 presidential campaign, there he is right there, President Obama encourages illegal immigrants to vote. Obama's quote was, when you vote, you're a citizen yourself. No, you're not. This is the President of the United States. This is a bona fide quote, encouraging illegal immigrants, illegal aliens to vote. When you vote, you are a citizen yourself. No, you're not. And if you think that's just a small deal, it's not a small deal. Back in 2008, somebody at a one of these town hall meetings asked Obama, "Do you think the vote will be stolen?" From you. And here he whips out and says, in 2008, he boasts to Ohioans, it helps that Dems are in charge of the voting machines. And then he says this, just to tell you, there's no voter fraud. Obama said Democrats and Republicans have monkeyed around with elections to, tilt things in their direction. This is according to the leader of the Democrat Party. The leader of the Democrat Party, Barack Obama, told illegal aliens to vote. And he just didn't mean a few, 4 documented cases. And he also says that, admits Democrats and Republicans, monkey around, to tilt things in their directions. And speaking of which, you saw that the Washington Post was, this is the Washington Post talking about, how, this ludicrously false claim. WAPO, Washington Post, 12117, that's Washington Post. False claim, that's not how Trump is the sorest winner in American history. Well, according to the Washington Post back in 2014, they ran this little niblet. Could non-citizens divide the November election? Washington Post, 10/24/14. I got this from Rush on the radio, and I thought, well, I'm going to look that up. And it basically says in that story that here's the nugget of it. I'm going to read it all for you, but you know where it is. Most non-citizens, I like this low tech, right? Most non-citizens do not register, let alone vote, but enough do that their participation can change the outcome of close races. Again, Washington Post 10/24/14. We had a race in North Carolina right here in this year where the governor was decided by around 10,000 votes. This is another, plank in the, there's good reason to have an investigation because there's been plenty of information about voter fraud and the integrity of the system, even though people like Lindsey Graham say, oh, no, and Paul Ryan, the system has a sound to take. No, that's false. That's not true. And I think he's going to come up, and this is going to be one of these things where, Trump blurts out 3 to 5 million, and we're going to get around 3 million or so of that they're going to find that have voted. In California, they give a driver's license, and they have 1,000 people with driver's licenses. And in all the states, you can't ask people to show a driver's license. It's disenfranchising. That's like, officer, I was driving, 95 miles an hour on Interstate 40, and I'm not showing you my ID. That's disenfranchising me as a citizen. Or opening a bank account. And I don't want to show you Patriot Act. What's that? Patriot Act, Smatriot Act. I'm not going to show you any ID. I want to open a bank account and deposit $100,000 in cash. So here is in 2012, Pew Charitable Trust, that blue is the hyperlink, report February 2012, 1 in 8 voter registrations, 1 in 8 are significantly inaccurate, no longer valid, since there's 146 million Americans registered to vote. All translates to about 18 million invalid voter registrations on the book. Further, more than 1.8 million deceased individuals are listed as voters, and approximately 2.75 million people have registrations in more than one state. News broke out today, one of Trump's daughters has a registration in more than one state. Doesn't mean she committed voter fraud or election fraud. Numbers of this scale obviously provide ripe opportunity for fraud. Here we are again. Let's come back to this year, this election. And, Jill Stein, the communist running, trying to win and lost by, she wasn't even close. Jill Stein was on the ballot. She wanted a recount. So here we go. In Wayne County, records too many votes in 37% of Detroit's precincts. This is the Detroit News. Too many votes. Really? You mean like voter fraud? Like ballot box stuffing? Here's another one. Revealed Michigan recount uncovers serious voter fraud in Detroit. Votes counted up to 6 times. This is the Gateway Pundit. Here's another one. Daily Caller. And this goes back to 2008. Study claims that the 2.8 million non-citizens voted in 2008. 2.8 million voted. Well, that's around the 3 to 5 million number that Trump's talking about. And then it goes on to say that, and I want to just read this all to you. Let's just read it together. Because, this is the same story, 2.8 million, 2008. Because non-citizens tend to favor Democrats, Obama won more than 80% of the votes of non-citizens. Folks, they counted in 2008. Okay? Votes of the non-citizens in the 2008 CCES sample, that's the people that did the study, we find that this participation was large enough to possibly account for a Democratic victories in a few close elections. Non-citizen votes, listen to this, could have given Senate Democrats the pivotal 60th vote needed to overcome filibusters in order to pass health care. You remember that's imploding. Health care reform and other Obama administration, and it goes on to say, Obama administration priorities in the 100th and 11th Congress. Oh, yeah. The same people that said that Trump was basically lying, that there's no voter fraud. This came from the Washington Post 10/24/14. And then you have here in the state of North Carolina, the Voter Integrity Project. This was 2014, 739 voter registrations from people the election officials can no longer find. Acorn and NCPIRG were both prosecuted for creating false voter registration. Then this could become an easy target for wholesale voter identity theft. 36,000 cases, same thing. 36,000 cases of interstate double voting. This is according to the Voter Integrity Project. We had an election in North Carolina. As I told you, it was settled by around 10,000 votes. That was the winner. This is a state of 10 million people. And then finally, this is a different altogether. 35,000 people may have double voted. This is a different headline. Double voted by casting ballots in North Carolina and in another state during the 2012 election. Yeah, there's not a stitch of voter fraud. And, you have places where they have IDs and they don't want you to check them. Like California, you don't think people would be motivated to vote if they're not checking and not prosecuting? That, incidentally, when Obama in this past election, when he was telling illegal aliens to vote, he also said, don't worry, we won't prosecute you. And, a lot was on the line with the wall and the taxes and the illegal aliens not getting all the freebies and all the free stuff and building a wall and cutting that all off and the criminal deportations and all of that. Yeah, a lot on the line. You think that may have motivated some illegal aliens to vote? Oh, and let me tell you, I like calling them illegal aliens. Just before I left CNN, they sent out a memo and they said, listen, don't call illegal aliens illegal aliens. Call them undocumented. Oh, yeah, that sounds better. It's an accounting area. They didn't come here illegally and are cashing in on us taxpayers that are working, illegal aliens from other countries. Oh, no, don't call them illegal aliens. Call them undocumented, like it's an accounting problem. CNN actually did that before I left CNN. And I want to talk to you a little about little fake news. If you're in the White House and you're doing a story on the White House, this isn't doing a story on, some farmer that has a pig with, 5 legs. Okay? You're in the White House, you better get it right. And, we had that story about the bust of Winston Churchill being put back in the White House. And Obama took it out, the bust of Winston Churchill, and put a bust of Martin Luther King Jr. In there. And so this reporter did a story about how Donald Trump took down the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. and put in, the bust of Winston Churchill. Well, he did put the bust of Winston Churchill in, but the problem was that he moved the other bust just to the other side of the room. It was still in the Oval Office. Folks, this isn't a small mistake. This is done on purpose. You're doing a story where if you say that that Donald Trump, those redneck racists, those misogynists, those racists, that's the whole thing, racist, KKK, that whole thing, to propel that idea to people, which is false. And when you get a story on a fact like that wrong, well, you could have gone to Spicer or Conway and said, hey, I don't see the bust of Martin Luther King. Where'd you put that? Oh, it's right over there, right on the other side of the room. Then you don't do a story about how he takes down the bust of Martin Luther King and inserts the bust of Winston Churchill to make him look like a racist. Fake, false, intentional. I mean, what did he just get out of the 6th grade? He doesn't know how to ask somebody, hey, you're going to do a story that damages the credibility of the president, make him look like a racist, which is what the mainstream press tried to do falsely. And you don't ask, where's that bust? You just blab out the story. So Time defends, editor defends reporter of false Martin Luther King's bust story. They defended it. This is a woman by the name of Nancy Gibbs, managing editor of Time magazine, defended White House correspondent Zeke Miller, who should have been fired, frankly. If he's that stupid, he shouldn't be anywhere near the White House. That he couldn't ask a question is, where did the MLK bust go? Right? But, let's try to make Trump look bad. If I'd have been his boss, I'd have fired him. He'd have never set foot. One thing's for sure, he'd never set foot back in the White House. Zeke Miller, he falsely reported last week that Martin Luther King Jr. bust had been removed from the Oval Office after President Donald Trump moved in. No news organization ever wants to make an error, but we have procedures for handling them when we do. Zeke moved quickly to correct the record. We stand behind him for taking responsibility for the mistake. A mistake too big to miss. You wanted to make Donald Trump look like a racist, so therefore you reported that he took the bust out of the White House. When it's something simple, it's reporting 101. Hey, where's that bust? Because otherwise, I'm going to make you look like a racist. And listen to this. Here's this right here. This is this more crazy time because remember I told you they have to come. They have to have you think they are fair arbiters of the truth when indeed they're not. He and other reporters will continue to cover the new administration thoroughly, fairly, and fearlessly. Is it thoroughly to not ask about a simple bust? I mean, what are you going to do when you have a budget that you have to do or some big numbers, or something like that? It wasn't fair. And it wasn't thorough, and they did it on purpose, in my humble opinion. As a former network reporter at two networks who did investigative reporting, it's too big to miss. It was not a simple mistake. I've made mistakes before. I've said, $2 billion when I meant $2 trillion. I think in my article with Steve Quayle, I think I said Arctic one time instead of Antarctica or Antarctic. Instead of, in Arctic, of course, is on the North Pole, and in Antarctica is on the South. They made that mistake. Okay, that's a mistake. I didn't mean to do it, but sometimes you make a mistake. That's not a mistake. That's not a mistake. That's done on purpose to propel that idea that, Trump and his supporters are a bunch of redneck, racist KKK members to get rid of Martin Luther King Jr.'s bust. Too big of a mistake for just to be a simple mistake, when as a reporter, you should have verified that. The other thing is, another fake news story is, when I saw this, I thought, if I was Donald Trump, I'd fire every one of them. I'd fire anybody who had their fingers on this. And that is, bureaucrats bring 500 refugees into the country one day before Trump's expected ban. This is Breitbart. Now, this is, remember, thank you, WikiLeaks, for exposing this. Even Hillary Clinton admitted in her emails that you couldn't vet them. The FBI admitted you couldn't vet them. The top security people in America admitted you can't really vet these refugees. They could be, there was an idea that the refugees would infiltrate that the ISIS would infiltrate the refugees and cause mass murder and stuff like that. So that's not a crazy thing. And, of course, another one of Donald Trump's executive orders was to put a freeze on any countries which have a high amount of terrorism bringing refugees in for a while. I think it's 60 days, maybe 6 months. But anyway, he's put a temporary freeze on that. And so I thought, my goodness, they're going to get fired. Well, lo and behold, I see a couple headlines like this. State Department's entire senior administrative staff just resigned. Another Washington Post headline. U.S. State Department hit with mass resignations of senior officials as Rex Tillerson joins. This is IB Times in the U.K. Well, apparently people can't check their facts in the news media, or it's more advantageous to make it look like there's a mass exodus of people that just can't stand Donald Trump. When Breitbart runs, they made some calls and they found fake news. Media reports State Department, quote, mass resignation, end quote, officials actually fired. That's what I thought would happen to them. I mean, you intentionally bring in 500 refugees that cannot be vetted. I mean, what do you need? Just 1 or 2 or 3 to open fire on somebody and commit some terrible act of terror? I mean, who knows what percentage of them, after all, they did say that ISIS would infiltrate the refugees. And, of course, then these 500 people get all kinds of, housing and, Social Security and EBT cards. And, they get all kinds of stuff that even our veterans don't get. And so, yes, they were fired. That was the real deal. They were fired. And this is why I keep bringing this back up, about propaganda. I mean, information, especially of a biased, misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. Propaganda. Has the mainstream media, are they just nuts? I mean, I really thought after the election, I thought, well, I can go back to more normal analysis and more normal reporting, and certainly, they're going to be laying people off. I mean, certainly they'll stop. Nope. No. I mean, the press conference, one of the first press conference was Spicer, the press secretary. They was asked by, I think, Jonathan Carr, are you going to tell us the truth? Wow. Go look up yellow journalism. That is the classic textbook question, that kind of a question. Are you going to tell us the truth? Implying that he's going to be lying. And it's the same thing as you say, well, Mr. Smith, well, Mr. Carl, how often do you beat your wife? Well, I don't beat my wife. And so Spicer's, well, we're not going to lie. I mean, unbelievable. They are in la-la land. They don't realize they are so far out of touch. They're killing their own businesses. And now, instead of me just sticking up for Trump or just trying to correct the record, forget sticking up for Trump, I just want to correct the record. And now I am basically documenting the death of the legacy mainstream propaganda media. It's not reporting. I mean, it really. I mean, I was in the investigative units for ABC and CNN. I could not make a mistake. I couldn't make a bonehead mistake about this bust. When I see stuff like that, when you would just fact check that little fact because it's going to make the president look like a racist, I could not make a mistake on depleted uranium or banks doing malfeasance or foreclosure fraud or all the stuff I did, all the criminal and all the frauds and ripoffs I did. I had to be right on the money, boing. I had to be in the screws, on the crosshairs, in the center of the target. I could not make a mistake. And that should be the same for any reporter. Get it right factually. And boy, I mean, there's no way they're trying to get this right. No way. And I want to come back to the couple of questions I hadn't even talked about. The war question, just because I'm concentrating on the election fraud and voter fraud and all Trump's executive orders and all the things he's doing to try to pay off in his campaign promises. Here we have Mikhail Gorbachev, former leader of the Soviet Union, now Russia. He was there when it was the Soviet Union. And I think rating was, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, right? Well, it all looks as if the world is preparing for war. And I just wanted to bring that back. I mean, you talk about the blackest of black swans. I mean, war. And I don't see how the next war, if it gets going, no matter who's it against, and the United States is involved, we don't have, a nuclear exchange at some point. I hope I'm wrong. But maybe Donald Trump can pull out the economy. I do have one thing that I wanted to bring up about the 10-year Treasury. Went up to 2.6% and then went down to 2.3%. But here we are again. This is the 10-year Treasury at 5.16%. And if you look at this chart, here's where we are right about, right here. This is the 5.16%. But if you look just right here, just right in this area, we were at 1.3, 1.4%. I mean, it has gone up 60%. It's gone up a whole percentage point, 100 basis point. And in a very short amount of time. John Williams is going to be the early Sunday release, the economist from shadowstats.com. And I asked him about the 10-year Treasury. He says, well, it might rise, and if it does, housing's going to take a hit. And then, if they feel like they have to tamp it down, like my good friend Greg Manarino says, he says, they can't just say they want it low. They have to do something. Buy bonds, buy debt. We could have, a big dollar sell. If you could see as Trump goes along, I think he's going to be successful. And one of the byproducts is going to be inflation. We could have spiking interest rates. I will tell you that Manarino said that, he thought, hey, we're going to have a big rally right after he said this right after the election. And sure enough, we had a big rally. Does it hold up? Not if interest rates spike, not if the dollar gets... John Williams, economist at shadowstats.com. Please tune in to the early Sunday release. He gets into the weeds a little bit towards the end of the interview, and he's so smart. But it's worth a listen. Well worth a listen, about the fake numbers, about this, what could happen with spiking rates, about the dollar could get creamed, we could have hyperinflation. There's also some good news on the horizon. Things could turn around, but it's going to take a while. Watch John Williams for the early Sunday release. And with that, I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com with your comments and donations. That helps us out. And remember, as always, fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, above all, spiritually. Fear not. God the Father is in charge.